Hola, hola, ¿qué pasa? My name is Whitney Modeste Collazo, and I am the Hechicera of Horror here in my conjuring corner of Whitscraftngore. And so this is where I tend to tell tales of horror and folklore while I do makeup and art. And so today I will be talking about some folklore, some world folklore, and the subject is the fight and flight of butterflies. So this is where I talk of Marsh Fritillary Maidens and Mexican Monarch warriors. So as you can see, I already have this butterfly started on my face. And I chose the butterfly because I feel that they are symbolic worldwide of symbols of hope and strength and transformation and sometimes love and even the afterlife, and then some as imagery of deities from various aspects around the globe. And why I chose to talk not only about one but two particular places is because, of course, I've talked about on my channel about having roots from Mexico, but also I have Irish roots as well. And so I thought, okay, I would like to talk about the Irish folklores a little bit. And the Irish have a really saturated and rich lore of fairies, the fae, and deities that coincide with those appearances that have that butterfly or bird-like wings and spirit ties to these deities. And fairies and deities have a stronghold in Celtic mythology, and there's a lot that coincides with the transformations and afterlife, with all of that cycle. And there's one particular saying, and it's an old Irish saying, and it goes as butterflies are the souls of the dead waiting to pass through purgatory. And it was something that I could resonate with, knowing that here we as humans, we make those transformations, but sometimes things are so still and we feel like we're in a limbo despite whatever changes that we need to make within ourselves, whether if we want to or not. We are just entities or beings, and we're just waiting to go through these motions to pass through whatever limbo or transformation that we need to make for ourselves. And while I'm talking about transformation, there is one particular deity, Aiden. I just pronounced her the way she is spelt, and that was a mistake. Aiden. She is a deity, an Irish Gaelic deity, Celtic mythology. And she is one that has a strong hold of symbolic of transformation and even sovereignty, beauty, and she has gone through so many forms of transformation, and there's a resilience to that. But there is various stories about her. While I am so fascinated with a long version of her. I'm just going to briefly mention that she is looked at as a spirit or goddess in some ways. Aiden, she was known to have this affection, this attraction rather, to Meter. And he was the deity of the underworld. And while she had fallen or had an attraction to him, Meter had that same attraction to her. But who was not appreciative of the feelings that, or what had seen from a distance, was Falnuk, or I can't say her name right, but was Meter's better half, or wife rather. So she cast a spell on Aiden, turning her into water. And that water had made Meter aware or unaware of Aiden's presence. And he was looking for her, and when he didn't find any water, but he came across a butterfly, without knowing that that butterfly was actually Aiden, who had eventually made so many, well, I don't know how many transformations, but she eventually did turn into this butterfly. But as Meter didn't know, he was so infatuated with this butterfly that had followed him, who was Aiden. And she eventually made other transformations over time and into human form. There's some legends where they say like her and Meter had eventually did have a relationship as she had returned to human form. But I don't know so much about that aspect of that relationship or that lore. I just remembered, and when I had revisited the lore of her transformation into a butterfly, I thought that was pretty incredible. And when people have said that she had a connection to the land as representing sovereignty, people had belief that her beauty was compared to warriors' shields, and that her beauty was also unmatched to that of the land or I can't say unmatched, but rather like compared to the land and everything, and that surrounding was that Aiden has that representation of what is that of kings and warriors and their connection to the land, and feeling that is their strength and their power to take care of. And with that beauty and that responsibility, Aiden is a representation of those things. Now, I mentioned that Aiden is of a comparison to warrior shields, right? Well, that was also quite interesting to come across, because I like to talk about a warrior who is known more so as a goddess warrior, or not really a goddess, but some particularly look at her as a spirit, or someone that holds spiritual significance to the Nawa communities. And I have touched on Aztec Nawa beliefs and spirits and lore previously, as that is something that I'm very passionate about, knowing that that is something that is rooted in some of my own connection to that side of my family as well, and learning and reconnecting rather. And this entity, she has been known as a butterfly warrior, as a entity or goddess or deity, or known as Itzpapalok. And she is known as the leader of a celestial group of spirits called the Sitzime. And her name is Papalot. It means obsidian butterfly. And then I just remembered I didn't touch on Aiden. I think the name of her, Aiden, it means passion or beauty. I think it's passion. But going back to Ispapalot, her name means obsidian butterfly. And she has been known to be of an entity that has wings made of obsidian. She carries a shield and spear. Some have said in this belief that those two were made of obsidian. That she is a protector of warriors, or rather she would accompany them in the Nawa warriors in battle. But she's also the guardian of women and children and women giving childbirth, or into women that are enduring childbirth. And when those spirits of those people perish during, let's say, the women giving birth, if they do not make it during their childbirth, they are entering a paradise that Itzpapalot holds her strength and guardianship over those women and children that have passed, that have entered this paradise. And also, I think I read somewhere that those warriors from battle, should they perish, that they too entered this paradise. And I think that Itzpapalot, when I think her paradise over these peoples is called Domoanchon, which is a Nahuatl word for a paradise, for the afterlife, the paradise for these individuals. And the thing about Ispapalok is that when the Spaniards have arrived, there was a lot of things that were shifted and moved around to make Itzpapalot appear as a demon and not so much as a guardian. And colonization had really infiltrated the religious systems, showing, especially the women deities or entities rather, to demonize them, because she was someone as an entity that did represent afterlife. They looked at her to rechange and revamp and transform that into something dark and sinister, though she was someone that did have not only that butterfly obsidian wing-like look, but she also had a skeletal feature. And when people see skeletal or hear of those things that are represented in those spiritual forms, they will, like the Spaniards, will look at it as something evil, dark, not something that is accepted as a power of life and death. But over time, it took so much for recognition, for certain celebrations of life and death to come about with holidays such as Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead. But that is for another time and another video. But I feel like I have talked quite fast about these entities, or rather these deities, as Aiden was the maiden of Irish lore, and Itzpapalotl being the warrior, or representing warriors. So while I've talked about the connection of Aiden representing sovereignty and land sovereignty, and then Itzpapalotl representing warriors, I want to talk about also a modern warrior who did have care for the land, who was it at heart a warrior, who was at heart someone who did defend their land and defend their community and defend butterflies as a warrior. And today I'm dedicating that factual point of a butterfly warrior who was, you could say, a monarch warrior, was Homero Gomez Gonzalez. And he has such a fascinating story. I've told myself I'm not gonna cry doing this, but I can't promise that. But I'm trying to do like some waterproof makeup, and it's not all of it's waterproof. As there is this individual, Homero, he had created a conservation for monarch butterflies after noticing that these butterflies were at risk in Michoacan, and that's where he's from, in Michoacan, Mexico. And he and his family, he had managed to talk to his community, get his communities involved, take care of his communities, and he created a system, a conservation, where people all around the world eventually saw the beauty that he had promoted and had shown of the conservation of this butterfly, the monarch. And people from all over the world would come to this conservation. And I think that was something that was really, really amazing that he had. I mean, even people that were newlyweds would come to this conservation system. The thing is, though, as much as it was a good point for people to observe and come and recognize and visit, not all the visitors were positive on this land. Some of those visitors were more like infiltrators, and on those lands where these butterflies, these monarch butterflies live. See, the monarch butterfly, they come from Mexico, and they make this beautiful migration system from Michoacan, from Mexico, and then they go to the States and to Canada, and they migrate back and forth during certain seasons. And what's neat is that I remember when I was going to Mexico, I would see the signs where they would say to be careful and cautious, because there is a certain time when you will see these monarchs flying. But it's a brutal but beautiful thing to know that these things have a knowing and a way to migrate in these systems. But back to those who had infiltrated these systems were people who had worked in illegal logging, and these people that worked cutting down, deforestation, and taking over the lands were cartels. And these cartel systems, they would do the deforestation processes, taking and cutting down these logs. And the logs illegally would be about roughly $1,000 each, because they know they can get away with selling it at that amount of money. Like, each tree is that much money. And I didn't know that until recently. But what would they do after deforestation and clearing out these areas where these butterflies would reside is that they would set up for illegal agricultural residents of developing avocado trees, planting them, exploiting the workers that would pick these avocados. And it's illegal work, because it was the cartels that had come up with this system to infiltrate and bully and own this property. And this was such a crucial reason as to why Homero eventually he got into local politics, and he would fight tooth and nail for his community and for those butterflies and the conservation, to make sure that those butterflies and that conservation would remain at bay. But then he had received eventually he had received some threats, and it was not as accepting from certain individuals, those in power, and those in power. He had eventually disappeared. And when he disappeared, his family was extremely worried. And there's a lot to his story. Unfortunately, Homero Gonzalez, he had when he was found, his body was found in Ocampo in a reservoir. And the last time he was seen, he was talking to some local politicians. And it's strong. There's a lot of strong opinions. And I share that same opinion, that Homero was unalived by those politicians. There is a documentary on Netflix called The Guardian of the Monarch. The Guardian of the Monarchs. And that's how I found out about this information. See, I feel like a 5-year-old could solve this case, as his case is still open. Where it was reopened to the public, rather. So, I encourage anyone to please watch Homero Gonzalez, his documentary on Netflix, because it does tell a lot of truth to his warriorship and how he was a land defender and protector of these monarch butterflies. He really made a huge difference in his community, and it's such a beautiful but sad documentary. But when I had seen his story, it really inspired me. And I wanted to not only do this video, but I wanted to learn a little bit more about butterflies, the monarch especially, but I did learn very briefly about the Irish Marsh Fritillary Maiden, and that is a butterfly native to Ireland, and that is known as a butterfly that is, I think it's Ireland's only protected butterfly, as it is an endangered species. And as that butterfly is an endangered species, it's I think it's been endangered since the year 2000. And the Irish Marsh Fritillary butterfly is also not just a butterfly known to have been of Ireland, but it's been the UK and Spain, but this one is protected in Ireland. I'm pretty sure there are other conservation systems in other countries in Europe. However, it seemed like this one in particular was also mentioned in folklore. And that's why I said the Irish Marsh Fritillary Maiden as Aidan. Because I think I did remember seeing a story of her looking like that. And what's really neat about the Marsh Fritillary Maiden is that it has similar features, almost similar features to the Monarch. It's orange, has yellowish pigments, black, where it has, you know, the black stripes around. And so I thought to take this look as an inspiration from both the Monarch and the Fritillary Maiden a little bit. But I will go back and talk about the Monarch as an endangered species. It didn't become part of the list of endangered species until after Homero was found deceased. And when that happened to him, that was in the year 2000. And when the Monarch became an endangered species, it was 2021. I think I said that wrong about Homero. I'm sorry if I did, but I'm going to go ahead and say Homero, his body was found in the year 2020. And then it was the year after that the Monarch was considered endangered. And yes, it is still protected. And yes, his family still cares for the conservatory systems. And it just inspired me to go and have my own little experiences. I found out through a friend who isn't too far from the Greensboro Science Center, who made me aware that they had their own monarch conservation system. It's a small house called the I think it's the Cole, I think it's Cole, I don't know. Anyway, it's Cole family, but it's a monarch and butterfly conservatory at the Greensboro Science Center. And it was such a beautiful place to be. I mean, and it was so peaceful. I absolutely loved it there. I fell in love. It was seeing all these butterflies and seeing the monarch especially. It was absolutely beautiful. Just astonishing. And seeing those wings just flutter, like, really made my heart flutter. What was interesting is that, I got on the subject of, the beliefs of people, how they feel about a connection to the spirit world. And I'd like to believe to a certain degree, to a certain extent, that there is a possibility, a connection of the underworld. Wait, I said underworld. I meant like as another world. I believe there's a possibility of the afterlife, the other side. And going into this conservation center, they say you're not supposed to touch these things. But I did have a moment where I feel like where I not pray, but I speak mentally or have a moment to talk to my ancestors or spirit loved ones. And I don't like to talk about this a whole lot, but I felt like it's such a personal thing. Maybe to some it's a coincidence, but going in, I was like, oh, well, if in my mind, in my heart, I'm communicating to my loved ones on the other side, say,